you'd think that a typical piece of content would maybe be 5 to 10 different steps, or maybe even less. But really, to get to excellence and get to performant content, you realize it takes a lot more. It takes a lot of testing. It takes a lot of mixture of models. It takes different retrieval strategies. It takes a lot of reflection of the models to make sure that they're checking their own work.
Welcome to the Animalz podcast. I'm Ty Magnan, the CEO at Animalz.
And I'm Tim S., the Animalz Director of Marketing and Innovation.
This season on the Animalz podcast, we're focused entirely on AI content use cases, which means we're bringing you on a journey with us to meet with AI pioneers, those venturing beyond the hype to succeed or fail spectacularly. Today's guest is Alex Halliday. He's the founder and CEO of AirOps, which is a platform to help content teams make better use of tools like GPT and Claude. Alex is a serial entrepreneur. He, from a very young age, was the founder of a successful startup called Social Go. He's led product at large companies such as Teespring, Masterclass, and Bungalow. I'm excited for you to hear today's conversation with Alex. Did you know Animalz now offers a podcast service? We're taking over your audience's earbuds, reaching them during their commutes, their workouts, or when they're doing chores around the house. From show strategy to editing and distribution, Animalz can handle your podcast for you with that same originality and audience-first approach that we bring to all of our content. Every podcast episode can become fuel for your broader content program. You can mine your podcast for ideas for articles, social posts, and other kinds of content assets, helping you create more high-quality work in less time. Ready to start a podcast worth listening to? Head over to animalz.co, book a call with us, and we'll start talking about your podcasting goals. Well, Alex, thank you so much for hopping on the Animalz podcast. We start all of our episodes with one critically important question, which is, what content have you been consuming lately?
So I have spent a lot of time actually using the new OpenAI deep research feature to find pieces of content that I never would have found otherwise. So I'm really interested in kind of frontier SEO and interesting things that are kind of emerging as trends that we should be aware of. And deep research does this amazing job of finding things that just wouldn't come across my desk normally. So I've been going deep in kind of Reddit threads that I wouldn't have found. I've found a couple of interesting frontier projects that are really oriented around helping agents use websites. And so there's a project called LLM-based, which has been getting some traction. I've also been reading a little bit more on the kind of business strategy side as well, especially as we think about the next couple of years of the company and where we want to go. I've been really going deep on some of the kind of like OG business books and things that I think I must have read probably 10 years ago, but are starting to kind of resurface. So it's we live in this amazing time where kind of information discovery and now synthesis is like really, really incredibly aided with different AI tools, and so I'm becoming a much more, I think, sort of wider reader and sophisticated consumer of content with the aid of these tools.
Look at that. So you are using AI to read about AI to inform your AI company.
Yeah, I think we're kind of moving into the a perfect information age, which is like, you used to have like limited bandwidth to kind of synthesize content just because you can only read so much in a day. And now if you use these tools in the right way, you can actually, with the right questions and the right framing, you can actually consume and synthesize content at scale. Now, that's not the whole picture, right? Because you lose a lot of fidelity when you summarize things. But I do think it's really interesting to at least understand the pockets you can then double click on and kind of go deeper on. So I think the way that we consume and understand topics is going to become supercharged with these experiences when used in the right way. And those that are kind of ahead of the curve are going to have like a little bit of an unfair advantage by adopting these tools early.
That's awesome. Tim, are your consumption habits similar?
Yeah, I would say, well, I mean, even some of this interview was researched with deep research. So that's the kind of full circle. But I think the perspective is interesting because some people say we actually get lazier because we can just summarize everything. But you're kind of saying it makes me smarter if I use it in the right way. Do you see where you use it differently from people who might actually make themselves lazier by using AI too much to summarize everything?
there's definitely a sort of fidelity loss, right? As you summarize, you lose resolution, but you can consume a lot more. So I think depending on where you're at in your like understanding arc of a topic, it's kind of really helpful at the beginning, and then you probably want to go back to source materials towards the end. And so, when I'm trying to get smart on something, maybe working with like a new customer and I don't know anything about their space, or I feel like there's a technology we should be considering, I think it's a really great kind of, it's almost as if you gave like an MBA student a day to just go research something, and you get back kind of something that's like, it's not 100% right, but it certainly gives you a good picture through the lens of your specific problem, which I think is really helpful. And then, it's up to you to then use your sort of time to double click, go in and sort of go a few layers deeper. The laziness point is interesting. I separately think that AI obviously removes a lot of friction for a lot of tasks. I think it's a mixed bag. I think some things we are greatly aided by its introduction, and other things will be real losses actually for us. Some things that were hard were incredibly rewarding because they were hard. And I always think about learning to write as a younger person. That took me like 5 to 10 years up at school, just writing nonstop, getting good at that. I don't know if I would have ended up as a good of a writer had I known that I could kind of run over to ChatGPT at any point. So, AI is a tool, and I think we all have to figure out where to apply it in our businesses, in our lives, in a balance that kind of gives us net positive value. But there are for sure like risk modes as well.
Well, that principle sounds like it is at the core of what and how you're building AirOps. Maybe just taking a step back for a second, Alex, can you give us your intro and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to AirOps, how you decided to focus here for this chapter?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Alex Halliday. I am one of the founders of AirOps. We help brands drive organic growth through content strategies and the creation of high quality content. We have been working on this platform for about 2.5 years now. We originally started pre kind of LLM wave, working a little bit more in the data space. So helping teams kind of pull data from different corners of their business and bring them into frontline teams. And so that was the first problem we were building on, and we spent about 6 months there. And it was through applying early language models to that problem set that we had our kind of, head explode emoji moment. And we sort of realized that this technology just had such amazing potential, even in those early days, pre-ChatGPT. And kind of just through a process of, as you do so often in early stage startups, you sort of pull the thread and you see where you land and you talk to customers and you learn. We really realized that the business we wanted to build was to help really creative builders get more out of these models than they could out of the box. And so through just a process of iteration and a lot of hard work, we have kind of worked with probably a couple hundred companies now to take the raw knowledge and capability of something like a GPT-4o or an O1 style model, take that raw capability and turn it into a business process and business system that drives growth. And so it's along the way from raw capability to business outcome, there's all these things that need to be solved. It's not like, it's not necessarily how Sam Altman likes to say, where these models just, able to kind of change our lives instantly. In many situations, they need a lot of guardrails. They need a lot of thoughtful context and support. They need a lot of human oversight. And in some workflows, that means they can help with 30% of what needs to be done. In some cases, it's 80%. But almost universally, in every deployment of AirOps, for every content creation or refresh workflow, there is a good amount of human oversight at multiple points in the funnel. And I think that's the model that we like. That's the model that we think works. And case by case, customers with different comfort levels will figure out the right mix for them and the problems that they're trying to solve.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the model that would resonate with Animalz too, right? One that allows people to create content a little more efficiently, but is still using skilled content marketers to actually, sort of usher this thing along a process that they're taking anyways, even without the assistance of AI.
And I would say what we're actually seeing as a trend is that the kind of language models really, and obviously things like AI search summaries that you guys are very familiar with as well, they are really starting to eat a lot of the kind of what are called top of funnel terms, or kind of terms that are, the needs are easily met by sort of the default training of language models. And so where I think the emphasis starts to move more is into experiential content, so video and things that are visually richer, but also kind of frontier opinion, unique content, things that like you as a business are uniquely positioned to sort of put out into the world. And so we worked with a company where we realized they had all this amazing data on lawns across the US. And so what we worked with them to do is to create local pages which gave a ton of really rich information around lawn care that was very data driven. There was a lot of metrics on the page to help inform people on the seasonal lawn care and pH levels, all these things. But that is a great example of something that was AI assisted, human oversight, but really leveraged their unique domain expertise and something that the models out the box wouldn't be able to answer. So we love those kinds of like data stories or opinion stories that really are just unique and authoritative and perform well.
Nice. Alex, I heard you have some kind of relationship to Sam Altman and the Altman brothers. I think that's pretty cool. I think it kind of legitimizes what you're doing to an extent even further. Can you share a little bit of that just for us fanboys here?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for context, I moved to San Francisco when I was in 2013. I won't say how old I was. And I think the kind of, for those people that were in San Francisco around the sort of 2013 to 2016 era, it was a magical time. I mean, it felt like the tech world was there at the kind of blue bottle coffee, and you'd see sort of Jack from Square in those days walking around, and Sam Altman and Peter Thiel. All these people were just part of the neighborhood. And so I was there, kind of arrived from the UK, and my mind was blown by this like magical tech wonderland I was a part of. Honestly, it almost gives me goosebumps thinking about what an incredible time period that was to live in that city. And through living there, I got to know Sam and also his brother Jack, who I worked with at Teespring. So Jack sat a couple of seats down. Jack Altman sat a couple of seats down from me at Teespring and was honestly the heart and soul of that company. And I adored him, working with him. He was awesome. And Sam at this point was in between. I think when I first met him, was in between Looped and YC, and then he went on to his YC days. And we talked a lot about technology and the future and YC and startups. And he's always been someone that's he's kind of the person, like if you really can't solve a problem, you have to give Sam a call sometimes. And he's probably the best tech and early stage company systems thinker, and just like really how do you solve like these really interesting strategic questions, and often offers like really incredible insight. So maintained that relationship over the years. And his brother Jack was at the time running kind of the Altman, I think, family office, and was one of our first investors when we started AirOps. And so we've had a few calls with them and got insights. And I'll say like Sam doesn't really let me in too much ahead of the public in terms of what OpenAI is cooking. I have tried, but certainly his advice has been invaluable. So
Tim, look at that. We've made it however many episodes into this season focused on AI without even mentioning Sam Altman. But here we are, sitting just, a second connection away. Thanks for that anecdote.
I mean, one thing I will say is that if you just look at that business of OpenAI, it's actually pretty interesting where the value is accruing. I think, there's for a long time, everyone thought the LLM models were where all the value would accrue, but that's actually, the sort of value decay curve of these models is insane. And so where is the actual value in OpenAI? And I'm sure they have models that are coming, they're incredibly impressive, but right now, arguably it's more at the application layer with ChatGPT. And why this is relevant to your audience is because actually beyond the application layer is the services layer. And I actually think what we're seeing right now is that this AI model shift, the kind of investor sentiment and the just observing this play out, the kind of narrative has shifted so much from the models are going to just gobble up all this value to actually it's services and it's thoughtful implementation, and it's applying these to real world business challenges like marketing and growth, where there's a lot of present day value to be realized and a lot of really great businesses that are being built. And that's what that's where we see ourselves and what gets us really, really excited.
Alex, you recently published a blog article that's called The New Rules of AI Content: Win by Being Impossible to Copy. And you hit on this point already a little bit, like kind of the philosophy of how you think AI and content marketers or marketers at large kind of play together to create a winning formula. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of outline that philosophy similarly to the way that you did in the blog article, or at least just the way it comes out today?
Yeah, and I think going back to the perfect information point, consumers are going to have increasingly amazing superpowers to synthesize available content and make it available to them. And so, your job as a marketer is to ultimately make sure that your customer's brand is appearing where your customer is making decisions, be that in search, be that in sort of ChatGPTs of the world, or Siri's about to go through its own revamp in a couple of versions. And so where the content kind of battle plays out and how people are successful is shifting. And so I think as we see, kind of informational queries, or like we think of as like 0-click queries, are starting to eat a lot of the early kind of the kind of OG kind of content opportunities. And so where do we go now? And I think what we have seen again and again is that there is certain types of content that are just continuing to become more impactful and more relevant. So along with authority, which is obviously incredibly important, we could do a whole podcast on, the types of content that I think are really hard to copy and are continuing to be worthwhile investments can fall in a couple of different buckets. I think the first one is really authoritative opinion. So experts inside of your company or experts that you find, just really understanding kind of their point of view on a topic and making sure that LLMs in particular can understand the origin of that content and why that particular author is authoritative is something that's really, really important. So for example, we are working with customers now that will spend a lot of time creating questions using AI that then their team answers to then feed back into content in order to make sure they have that content grounded in original opinion from experts internally. That's just like one example. The second category is unique kind of metadata. And so that's instances where you have unique data sets internally. And the thing that always surprises me is that people just don't know what they have. So, we often get on calls with customers and they don't even realize that they have sort of treasure troves of usage data, or maybe it's maybe it's PDFs or kind of internal docs for like wine is one of the recent ones I worked with, where they had all of this information that they could leverage. And we're able to turn that into kind of unique pages with unique metadata that was telling a unique story, adding value to that customer's search journey. And then the third one is really kind of experiential content, things that take time to produce, that are not just text based and that are really able to sort of captivate the user and meet their need, and something that really is like a kind of destination content, as I've heard it called. And so I think you could imagine that like there's kind of a gold rush a little bit with like people creating a lot of like mid to low quality content with AI. I think that's going to shift a little bit as 0-click queries kind of emerge and continue to erode into top of funnel. And I think what we'll be left with is a real emphasis on finding frontier opinion and unique data and telling unique stories and delivering great experiences through content. And so that's your point about, humans being an important part of the content production process. I actually think that continues to be the case, and AI is an important tool, but really an emphasis on quality, originality, and authority is going to just become ever so more important. The other thing I will say is I think depth of content on the basis that people can synthesize instantly using AI, actually making sure that there is really great depth in the content that's created, and actually making potentially longer pieces of content is something that I could see increasing as well, just in this new era.
I think we should, because I realize, because we're talking a lot about AirOps, which makes sense, but I think we three are all familiar with what it is. But if as a listener, you might not completely understand what the platform looks like or what it does. So maybe you can walk us, like kind of paint what one of these workflows would look like, maybe with the wine example or another example, just like.
Can I pitch AirOps the way that I see it and see
Please.
how my
Yeah.
messaging resonates with you, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay. The way I have described AirOps to friends and colleagues is that it's like a canvas for you to build workflows to create content. And in that canvas, you can have all of your prompts laid out, and you can query, or you can like run those prompts against different LLMs, depending on what's the right fit for that exact query. So you start with Perplexity to do the research, and then you could, use some, GPT, and then you can actually use Claude if you like the way that Claude writes, that kind of thing. It's a lot more sophisticated than that, but again, like a canvas to build these like AI workflows.
Yeah, I love it. I think we see the best results from instances where people have big ideas that they want to build. And so, I think AirOps is an incredibly flexible platform. We have a workflow builder and a canvas that lets you build with a mixture of AI models, internal retrieval, so pulling insights and nuggets from your own data and content and knowledge, and then also external data sources as well. So we basically allow you to compose with all of these pieces. And, you'd think that a typical piece of content would maybe be 5 to 10 different steps, or maybe even less. But really, to get to excellence and get to performant content, you realize like it takes a lot more. It takes a lot of testing. It takes a lot of like mixture of models. It takes different retrieval strategies. It takes a lot of reflection of the models to make sure that they're checking their own work. And so we have people building workflows that are maybe 30 to 50 steps to create a single piece of content. But what you see out the other end when you first look at it is so far away from what you'd get out of a chat GPT that suddenly it clicks. It's like, oh, actually, I need to transpose my knowledge of my business and my customer onto this system and have AI do as much of it as I'm comfortable with it doing. And then I, as a human partner, need to step in and perform tasks along the way to course correct, provide feedback, and make critical choices. And so we really see ourselves as the platform where big ideas kind of get built out and tested. And also we put all of these amazing raw capabilities in the hands of creative marketers to then bring these big ideas to life. And that's when people have these big wins or they make something amazing and they get a great outcome, that is the best moment at AirOps in the week. That goes in our wins channel. The team comes to life. Makes me really happy. It's why I do this. So that's what it's all in service of.
Nice. Same. Yeah. I mean, we kind of have this. Yeah. We love making customers, grow and win with content too. So we get off on the same thing. What would your advice be to folks that are doing what we call the spray and pray SEO technique? Say they're doing 100 articles a month. They're lightly editing it, right? I made quote fingers for those listening, which means like maybe not editing, whatever. Someone might look at it quick. What would you tell them?
I think 100 article. So great question. So for people creating larger volumes of content, I think that there's definitely a relative element to this. If you have millions of pages, 100 articles a month will be could be a totally reasonable amount. I think there is a window of opportunity where I would say kind of general informational content can still perform well. And there's still an appetite for it. If you have authority in that area and you can rank, there's still a very valid play to create quality, authoritative content to get at those top of funnel queries for a period of time. Bonus points if you are formatting the content in a way that is highly optimized for answer engines, which looks like more question answer style content. I think there's definitely plays there that are valid. I think the more you stray away from your topical authority, the more risk you introduce. So like the HubSpot example that is very well publicized, they created all this content that's like, just completely unrelated to HubSpot.
How do you tie your shoes and chew gum? Yeah.
How do you tie your shoes? Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I've been in companies where we have created totally unrelated pages that have done very well. So I know how this happens, but it's sort of, it's probably no skin off their nose, given that I don't think that was converting into a $40,000 a year HubSpot contract, that piece of content. But I think there is a window of time where general informational can work. I think it's changing a little bit, but in terms of the kind of the real gold that will rank, be cited, and will be persuasive to both agents and end users, right? Because we have a new middleman to convince now. I think just really thinking about how am I adding to the conversation, how am I meeting this search intent better than anywhere else, and what unique kind of insights, opinion, or data can I bring to the conversation? And I think if you can kind of balance those two realities, you'll be set up for success. But as with all things, and I'm sure you guys know this too, right? You do this with your customers. There is a need to be keeping a very close eye on what's working, test and learn. Don't dump 10,000 pages overnight. There's kind of responsible ways to do this in order to make sure the health of the system continues.
Yeah, we emphatically agree, right? I think about like, if you don't have the time to read and edit this thing, like why should your audience? What kind of relationship are you building with them if you're just like publishing crap? And so like, yeah, there might be short-term arbitrage here, but at Animalz, we like to think about long-term solutions more often than short.
Yeah, we've been thinking about this idea, like where does all the frontier opinion live for you in your business? Like if you're talking to, if we're talking to a wine merchant, for example, like, okay, so there's probably locked inside that organization some amazing nuggets, whether they're in support tickets or they're in tasting notes or they're in interviews they've done with potential vineyards. And so I love this like treasure hunt a little bit with customers where it's like, okay, like how can we like just start telling me about your business and let's see if we can find some unique little gold veins that we can then go mine, because I think there's sometimes some really great opportunities there that people don't even realize.
And do you do that treasure hunt with a traditional content team? Like let's say with the wine business, who comes to you? Is it still content teams or is it totally different kind of roles and skill sets that work with you?
I mean, the amazing thing is just the spectrum of resourcing that companies have. Like we talk to some companies and they're super organized and they come to us with, I'm sure you have this too, right? There's some companies come to us and they have everything cataloged and they've got their Google Drive folder with everything in and they're like very buttoned up, and other folks just have no resources at all because maybe they've never built that muscle internally. So it does vary a lot. I think we love to find a content team internally. We love to work with an agency that a company is already engaging with. I mean, typically, like we really like to find that champion that gets it, that knows where all these things are located, and also really understands the business, because there is that kind of, you want that kind of customer audience persona ingrained in the head of your counterpart in these companies. It's because they know what their audience wants. They know how they like consume content. They know what they're looking for, and they can also just like they can just tell if something passes the sniff test or not.
Alex, you were starting to make mention of how to optimize content for AI overviews, or how to do generative engine optimization, whatever the hell we call it today.
Yeah, someone needs to decide.
Every other week. Do you have any perspective on tactics or strategies that you might advise teams to use to optimize for generative search?
Yeah, I sort of love this stuff, to be honest, in part because we got product market fit with content marketing pretty early on in the business. And I felt like on that front, I've been learning a lot. And on this front, I feel like nobody knows anything yet. So it's really awesome. So I think, there's a lot of people claiming to have certainty in this when there really isn't. And that sounds good for a sales pitch, but the reality is these models are shifting, the retrieval mechanism's shifting, it's going through a lot of change. And so one thing's for sure, it's like test and learn. We always say this. It's just like you gotta kind of figure out things for yourself, and you've got to also make sure you're just staying up to date with what's happening, because there's a lot of change that's happened recently and is coming. Things that still matter, obviously, SERP authority really matters for your topic. SERP is still used as the primary ranking mechanism for retrieval in AI-based experiences. So ChatGPT will make queries to Bing search in their case, will retrieve some pages, synthesize them, and return to users. So, all the things you do to get authority in your relevant topics, you should continue to do. That really matters. I think the next thing is the actual content you're creating on the pages themselves. So there's a world in which you rank for the query, but you don't get cited. And so, you're now in the business of not only having to persuade a human being and the Google algorithm that your content is valuable, you now have this new middleman, which is the agent or the kind of LLM-based experience. And so making sure your content is cited is again something that's like very poorly understood, to be honest. However, what seems to be working is kind of rich content that is not too fluffy. So for product descriptions, that means being very clear on the sort of facts in the product description and moving away from romance copy, as they call it in e-commerce. And then potentially breaking down certain chunks of content into question answer formats that more closely match the things that customers are gonna want. So those are sort of like, that's fairly understandable. I think, like, just from a practicality standpoint, it's going to gravitate towards chunks of content that are not too long, that meet the question intent that the user is expressing. I think beyond that, I would say that like only Googlebot can render JavaScript. So making sure that the content you're publishing is in like the underlying HTML. So don't use any of these like JS SEO tools because they're not going to help you. And then also there's sort of increasing evidence that the schema, so schema.org has all these different HTML schemas for information structures. So having your content structured in that way helps with readability for certain types of content. I think this is all going to change. So I have a few ideas about where it might go, but I think that for now, those are some of the things that we're observing and recommending.
Funny, I've also heard contradictions to what you just said around like schema particularly being something that is more ignored by LLMs because they're just reading the straight HTML. I describe it as like, it's a really opaque black box. Like we always say SEO is a black box, but like, is it really? Like we've reverse engineered this thing pretty well over the last decade or so. But now it's like we have a new black box and we haven't fully reverse engineered this thing yet.
I think there's also a sort of new crop of tools that are claiming to kind of help with understanding your sort of citation rate and relative ranking. I think I've looked at a bunch of them. I think they're still so early that it's just much like search was at the beginning. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for the rules of the road to really emerge, and the tooling stack there to emerge as well.
I find it interesting that you find this topic interesting, right? I mean, as the CEO at AirOps, like, why do you care so much about the latest tactics around, GEO?
I care about this because ultimately we're trying to help customers put high quality information in front of customers that are making buying decisions and seeking to learn. I think that kind of there is a very real world in which the majority of content consumption happens via an agent-based experience in the next 36 months. And Chrome starts to incorporate this at the browser level. And obviously Google search summaries expand and ChatGPT and Perplexity continue to grow. So I'm interested because it's a fun problem. It's an exciting new paradigm. I think for things like comparison shopping, it just changes the game. And so that's great for customers and sort of people that want to really go one click deeper. And it presents a new set of challenges for our customer and our partners. And so to the extent that we can be educating and building product to support and sort of commissioning research where appropriate, I think that's a really important role for AirOps to play, because we never intended to be just an SEO content optimization tool or creation tool, right? We want to create engines that drive growth through the creation of content and meet customers wherever they happen to be. And so that's where this emerging like landscape really becomes exciting for us, because we get to lead and do some really exciting frontier work. And on the product side, like I think that's where we're really excited as well to start to ship things soon that will support our customers in this direction as well.
So Alex, I'll confess, I've been a little skeptical that AirOps would stay in the niche of content marketing in perpetuity. Do you really plan to stay here and continue to focus on this market, or is this the beachhead and you really do hope to expand? Because it feels, I want you to know as a content marketing agency owner, like I feel the commitment and I think it's wonderful, but I'm always like, the name is AirOps, right? And like, there's a ton of other things you could go automate. Help us understand that vision and broader go-to-market expansion.
It's a great question. I think we have a major focus and a minor focus. We spend probably 70% or 80% of our time on the core sets of use cases that are similar to yours, right? So we really care about research, brief creation, content, and increasingly things like content refresh and health and metrics. I think that's like a little bit of an illusion of a problem set, meaning when you first look at it, you're like, oh, I get this. You like slap an LLM and you create some content and you're like, should be a week of product development work. And then you have something. And the answer is like, absolutely not. Like the more we peel back the onion and the more we work with brands that have really high standards or have regulatory concerns, like the more product there is to build, the more things we have to solve. And so I've loved just being like, really surprised and in some places humbled at like what it actually takes to get these amazing models, AI models, to be actually useful in real businesses. Like crossing the chasm from like AI can do something to AI is actually creating on-brand production grade outputs has been like a full team's effort for the last 18 months. And we're still only a fraction of the way there, honestly. So I think that it's always fun to tell a big story in a startup of like, we let you build growth systems, right? Which was our positioning for a while. But the reality is like, that is very hard for someone like you to assess like the fit of a platform that makes such a big promise to your real business. And so we've enjoyed going really deep. I think we've enjoyed building relationships with content marketers and content teams and organizations where content is a core part of what they put out into the world and what value they want to deliver to their customers. I think for us, it makes way more sense for us to continue down that path and then sort of think about the next adjacency that we want to add on rather than going to do something like sales, for example. Like sales would be a totally different conversation, different buyer, different customer, different problem set. And so I love our focus. I think some people misunderstand it, which I think is a huge advantage for us. Like we kind of hide in plain sight, to be honest, versus like AI SDRs or something, which is like 300 startups pursuing. And when you meet, and sometimes like you meet customers and they don't get it, but more often than not, the people that really care about their stuff and they love it and they care about the conversation that they're having with their customers at scale. We have a really great partnership and they end up being like really great customers for us. So no regrets. And I think we will expand, but it probably won't be like into a totally different space. It will be continuing to build on the beachhead and hopefully provide more things that folks like you would find valuable.
I think it's a great community, to serve a lot of interesting intellectual people that have a creative spark.
Yeah, we call them moonshots. So we call folks like you moonshot marketers, where you basically have these ideas that would have been impossible 2 years ago, and between us, we help you bring them to life. And it's like, and that makes me really happy that we're able to kind of give people the rails and the tools and the Lego blocks to go build things that get them really pumped, get their customers great outcomes. And it's just like, for us to be able to facilitate that is like absolutely awesome. I love it. Yeah, it's very, very motivating for the team and for me.
I think that's a perfect bridge to one of the last questions we had on the list. What is a moonshot project or idea that you'd like to see realized with AI in the coming 1 to 2 years?
Moonshot idea for AI. So I do a lot of dictation to models, and I like to walk and talk and then ask it to like synthesize it, whatever, and come back in the morning. So this is how I clear my head at the end of the day, right? So this is like pro tip to anyone. If you feel overwhelmed at work, go for a walk, just talk for 45 minutes and let AI organize your thoughts, and then go and take a nap, come back to it. Life will be materially better after that. But what I think is helpful is kind of this AI as a thought partner. And so I'm using it on the individual level, but I actually would love to have a better kind of context-rich assistant that could actually participate in meetings and would be able to kind of provide like real-time feedback with a good understanding of a business for like quite hard problems that we're dealing with. I think, you sometimes in a small team reach a kind of local maximum of where you're able to take the conversation. And I think having an AI participant added to like a debate or a brainstorming session could be really helpful if it has the right context. So I'd like someone to build that, please.
Nice. Yeah,
I got it.
Yeah, I thought I've been thinking about something similar for these podcasts, for example, where you can kind of have this head-up display and it will say, "This is the best next question to ask." It was kind of listening in. And you can have that for all kinds of meetings, right? Where it just shows you like you can go here, you can go there, and I think that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Or you can create one which is like, hey, you want one to be a customer and one to be an investor, and you want one to be a competitor, and you can have like these different actors, right? We're doing more kind of micro, like synthetic audience LLM steps where we ask them to kind of like read things and pick their favorites. And that's a super interesting trend as well, where you can kind of sort of pre-test various pieces of content. I love that stuff. So good fun.
Yeah. Share the wealth there. I mean, I love to put my hands on a product like that. That's really interesting. Well, it's been a real privilege to have you. I learned a ton. Thanks for spending some time. Where can folks follow you and sort of continue to learn from you and the AirOps story?
Yeah, so we're a team that loves talking to people building in the space with big ideas. So you can find us at AirOps HQ on Twitter or X, and then our website's airops.com. If you want to email me personally, always open to chat, alex@airops.com. It's an easy one. I think, particularly if you have a big idea that you want to bring to life and you're not sure if it's possible, or, maybe you're working on something really cool and want to integrate with us, there's lots of things we're open to discussing. But I think, this entire space that we're in is going to go through a lot of shifts and changes. And so we all kind of have to knowledge share and figure it out together. And would love to connect with folks who are working on kind of adjacent problems or kind of curious about how this is all going to unfold.
He also has a great LinkedIn feed going. You didn't mention. Alex Halliday, Halliday. Search him on LinkedIn. I just started following you and have been digging the latest stuff you've been putting out.
Guys, huge pleasure. Thank you for having me. This is great.
I honestly think Alex, and generally what I've heard from AirOps, is the most philosophically aligned tool partner that I've met. Actually, I would give a shout out to Kyle Coleman too, and like Copy AI. But I think like what Alex was saying today was like really aligned to the way that I have experienced using AI to create content, for side projects, for myself, whatever. And I've seen now Animalz also, land on as we've experimented over the years. And the nucleus is still like content workflows are very complicated. So like you need a lot of prompting, not just like write me a blog post on XYZ. You need a person there to check, to edit, to give it feedback, to run it again, because the output was kind of weird because that's just the age of AI that we're in right now. My confidence increased throughout that conversation.
Yeah, mine also, but in a different way maybe. But I felt it's still early days, right? There's still so much to figure out. It's something I heard echoed also in other places, like even people working on these LLM models, like at OpenAI and Anthropic, who are saying like, we also don't really know what's going to come out, right? And we discover new things every day. So it's not only a black box at like the SEO, the content level, it's like a black box like all the way down. Yeah, I think he echoes that sentiment also of like there's just so much to discover and it's so early, which is really exciting, I think.
Yeah, I also find when we chat with early adopter types, like tinkerers, if we can call you that, if we can call Alex that, like I get also inspired to like tinker more, right? And like a lot of the answer, I mean, if you take this combination of like it's a black box, people don't really know, and like I like to tinker, like that's kind of how you end up having breakthroughs, right? And being really ahead of the game.
The other thing I noted was like I had to think about our thought leadership piece on the blog where we talk about earned secrets. He phrased it differently, but it's like you have to look for these pockets of or nuggets in an organization, like where do they have this gold that can kind of feed into the model that will make great output? And it's like, yeah, that's the earned secret, right? Like you kind of have to search for the earned secrets and they show up in unexpected places and trying to find those. I think that's also a good kind of takeaway. Like we knew that a little bit, but it's the obvious ones of like, oh yeah, your sales goals or whatever. But like indeed what he said, like, yeah, the list of, what was it, like wine tasting notes or that. Yeah, there's so many things that could potentially go into these models and create unique content. I think that's awesome. That was also a good reminder.
Totally. Yes, like expert led or however you want to put it. At the end of the day, like it's so funny, all of the kind of like innovations or changes in SEO, like it kind of all continues to come back to something that's pretty core at Animalz, which is like write content that people will find interesting and enjoy, and it's valuable, right?
Yeah.
And then it will perform. And so like that principle has gone unchanged through so much change.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's also where he also still sees a lot of value or potential for the future. That kind of, what he called it, experiential content.
Okay. And one more piece that I'm still like, again, I said it's very blurry for me, but like AI agents and the way that changes kind of like the way business is done, the way content is consumed, the way then content gets created. Like, whew, it's fun to kind of imagine into it, but like, man, people are really sort of grasping at figuring that out next. And that to me is like the forefront of the forefront, or like, that's like 2 steps ahead.
It takes me 5 and 20 minutes to come back to you, right? So what I do is like, okay, research this and this and this for me. And then it's doing it kind of in the background, right? And that's a glimpse, I think, of what's going to happen. You're going to like almost like you assign a task to a coworker or something. It's like, okay, go do this for me. And then that's running in the background. So I could actually imagine you have all these kind of things running in the background while you are doing something else, either working or lying on the beach. But
I mean, responding back to other bots, right? It's like,
exactly. And then coordinate the next one.
Yeah.